candidate forum is being sponsored by the Neighborhood Council, and as you can see on the screen, we represent neighborhood associations in all of these neighborhoods. All right? Next. So we want to start tonight by having you look at the mission of the Neighborhood Council. And that is, the Neighborhood Council has as its purpose the promotion, maintenance, and enhancement of the quality, stability, and vitality of the residential neighborhoods of the city of St. Augustine. And having said that, we have 3 seats in this election. It's a big election. There's a lot of interest in it. And I'd like to introduce the candidates for those of you who don't know them. Incumbent for seat 3, Joe Bowles. Seat 3, Nancy Shaver. Seat 4, Todd Neville. Seat 4, John Valdes. Seat 5, Grant Mystery. And the incumbent on seat 5, Nancy Sikes-Kline. So we have different types of questions tonight. And as we did in the primary forum, all of the questions came from folks citywide. So we had several hundred questions submitted to us. Some people sent a note in and said, just use the ones I sent from the primary. I haven't changed my mind. I still have the same questions. I haven't heard an answer. We had other people who sent in a lot of what I would call snarky questions. We got rid of all those because that has no place in a forum like this. So what we did then was to take all of the questions and analyze them down to see what are the real issues that people are focused on. What do they really want to know from each of these candidates? So we have some general questions for all 6 candidates, and then we have questions that are specific to each candidate based on her or his platform. So what are they saying on their website? What are they saying in their materials? So we have a number of questions based on those. Each of the questions is timed, and you will see the time go up on the screen with the question. And as we did in the primary, Andrew Schermacher is our timekeeper. He will hold up a 30-second sign, candidates. When you see that, there's 30 seconds to wrap up your response before you hear. Can you hear it?
You'll hear it.
Okay, you'll hear it. Okay, all right. Okay, all right. Okay, all right, good. So what I'll have to do is we only have this mic. So I will read the question to the candidate and then hand the microphone to that person. And then when the 30-second sign goes up, I'll stand behind them to make them even more nervous to get the mic back from them. Yeah, thanks. Okay, I think that's enough of that, but we wanted you to see the mission because the first question has to do with the mission of the Neighborhood Council and why we were created. Joe Bowles, opening question, 2 minutes. What have you personally done in your time on the commission to engage residents in decisions? How have you interacted with the Neighborhood Council and or neighborhood association to promote the quality, stability, and vitality of your neighborhoods?
Thank you, Rhey. I think the thing that we can do for the neighborhoods the best is to protect the neighborhoods. I and this commission, the commissions I've been serving on the last 8 years, have adopted a number of regulations that protect you. First protection for a neighborhood is to make sure commercial intrusion does not hit your neighborhood. And biggest commercial intrusion you have is non-present homeowners that are renting homes out in your neighborhood. When that became a problem, we adopted an ordinance that said no more than 3 unrelated people can live in a house. Now, how do we know that? We don't know until you tell us. If you've got a neighborhood house that's a problem and you think there are more than 3 unrelated adults living there, give us a call. I'm sure we will take care of it. Also, for some of the neighborhoods that were compacted, we've developed a residential parking only system. You merely have to ask, we'll come out and do it. But you do have to ask. You have to say, this is a neighborhood where we need some parking protection. It's occurred along the bayfront, it's occurred on Saragossa, it's occurred down at Water Street. That way you know, if you've got a permit, you can park. Your friends can park. For festivals and activities, we've got the no event parking signs up at the opening, and they're really helping. My mother lives in the neighborhood right down there past Ripley's. It's really had a good effect on me. Now, we have to have dialogue from you to let us know what's happening in your neighborhood. I live in one neighborhood, and my office is in another. So I can see and experience what's happening. But to keep these neighborhoods safe and protected, we need to know what you want to do. I've talked for years about architectural overlay zoning. I've told my mother they can build a geodesic dome next to her house. But her neighborhood has to decide, do we want some architectural overlays? HB1, you've got it a lot better.
Okay, so our other incumbent, Nancy Sikes-Kline. What have you personally done in your time on the commission to engage residents in decision? How have you interacted with the neighborhood council and or neighborhood association to promote the quality, stability, and vitality of your neighborhood? So we're asking the 2 incumbents first.
Thank you, Rhey. Thank you so much for having me tonight. I really appreciate that. It's a great question. It's something I've worked really hard on. I was a founding member of the SANS board when Jeanette Burke was president of it, and we worked together on grants. We installed bike racks. We have a historic marker that I was proud that I had an opportunity to write. I've been engaged in neighborhoods from day one. Lighthouse Park, since I was elected, Lighthouse Park had some circulation problems with their traffic and parking. I got a grant for the TPO for them to help assist with their circulation problems there. North City, I worked with them on eminent domain, fighting the D&B school. There were problems, and it was a lot of work. So I worked very closely with the neighborhood there to protect them. Also, down in Lincolnville, I championed the CRA for revitalization. I met with them many times. I've been out to them many times. I've been to their meetings many times. North City again, 7-Eleven, just 2 weeks ago, traveled to Lake City to talk to the secretary, the DOT secretary, to try and plead the case and to try and make intersection improvements there. Let's see, what else? I will say, okay, so something that's coming in the future that's great, that I can be proud of as a commissioner, we have gotten the neighborhood grant program refunded. So I want you to be sure and get the word out to your other neighborhoods so that y'all know that if they form, originally the reason we did the grant program was to get neighborhoods to form, to try to encourage them to form. So there's an incentive there, so if y'all get the word out, thanks.
Okay, so a neighborhood council question now for the 4 other folks. So for Todd, John, Nancy, and Grant, how will you engage residents in decisions? How will you interact with the neighborhood council and or neighborhood associations to promote the quality, stability, and vitality of your neighborhoods? So Todd?
Rhey, thank you. And also thank Brad and Andrew and everyone else who put this event on. Neighborhood interaction and reaching out to the community has been something that we put at the forefront of our campaign right from the beginning of me deciding to run. And it's something, it's funny, my wife and I, we were at an event for Bayview. And if you guys don't know, Bayview is just on that side of us. It's an assisted living facility. It is a facility that focuses on the continuum of care through the entire process of the healthcare continuum. And we have gone to that event every single year for, I don't know, I think the event's been going on for 6 years. And we looked around and we said, you know, we see a lot of other political candidates here who generally aren't here. And my wife said, you know what, I don't want you to look around and stop walking neighborhoods once you're in office. Because what you're doing at that point is only going to the neighborhoods when you need something. And she made me that night promise that I will continue to walk neighborhoods even once I'm in office when it's not the election cycle. And why will I do that? Because one of the most important things to stay engaged with the neighborhoods is to listen to the residents, to hear what their concerns are. We all have our sphere of influence. We all have our group of friends who are going to tell us that we're the greatest thing ever. Until you go out and listen to people who are not in that sphere, you're not going to know what is happening in the neighborhoods. And that's the primary thing that I'm going to continue to do to stay engaged in the neighborhoods.
Thank you, Rhey. You know, I haven't been walking neighborhoods. What I've been doing is I've been having think tanks where I go into neighborhoods. I ask people to come to someone's house who's a supporter or not a supporter. We sit around and we talk about the neighborhood and what needs to be done. Okay, I'm going to zero right in on neighborhood associations. That is the keystone to us getting things done in this town. Each one of you, boots on the ground, live in the neighborhoods, you know the problems of neighborhoods. I mean, right now we're dealing with the issue of zoning, Flagler, 100 Flagler Boulevard, Davis Shores, Sands is involved in it. I've already offered to mediate that. I will continue to be involved in such a way. I think I can mediate that situation so it doesn't result in a lawsuit, and it will help soften the impact of commercial zoning. I know this stuff. I've been doing it for years. I just came from a planning and zoning board meeting. It lasted 4 hours. My last meeting, by the way. Now, I resigned. I had to. Anyway, the point is neighborhood associations are huge. The best thing George Gardner did, or probably one of the many things he did, was to implement that particular program. We can approach many, many problems we have from the bottom up. City government responds to a city commission. The city commission responds to its citizens. The citizens have to be proactive. And by doing that, the best lobby to get there is your homeowners association. If you don't have a homeowners association, for God's sakes, form one. If you aren't a member of it, become a member. Then you have a voice. This is a democracy. It works with small government. Not so darn good with big government, but it works at this level, and we can make a big change and make the changes make sense because we know what makes sense, because we live it, we experience it, we feel it every day. So join your neighborhood association, make your voice be heard.
Same question.
You know, this is a great question, and I think it highlights the difference between myself and my opponent. Democracy is about listening. It's not about waiting for you to call or waiting for you to point out a problem. My commitment is to a completely transparent, open communication with all of you. It's very humbling to think about representing 10,000 people. And the only way to do that is to be out and talking to people. I commit to regular citizen coffees. I commit to being at every neighborhood association I can make, because that's the only way I will hear and listen. You are looking to me to be a leader who listens and takes what your concerns are, gives you the facts you need, and comes back to you and engages you in talking about solutions. That's what democracy is, whether it's a neighborhood association or whether it's a taxpayer of any type. That is what you are hiring me to do, is to listen to you.
the neighborhood associations are extremely important. I think communication is such an important aspect of leadership, and communicating why the city makes the decisions they make, getting buy-in from the residents, but also listening to what their concerns are. One of my key platforms is updating our zoning codes. I started on the Planning and Zoning Board for 6 years. I was chairman of that board. And we ran into various issues where the zoning no longer matched what our neighborhoods wanted to be. And there's symptoms of this outdated zoning code. In a lot of cases, the zoning code's at 38 years old. We've made some spot updates to it here and there. But you have this 7-Eleven as a symptom of the outdated code. The property at 100 Flagler is another, and there are various other symptoms. So my plan is to reach out through the neighborhood council because it's such an effective organization. Rather than having a blanket workshop when I'm elected that says, let's update the zoning code, what I'm going to do is utilize the neighborhood association and have meetings on a neighborhood by neighborhood basis where it's very clear that this is the zoning in your neighborhood, this is what could happen, is this what you want? In some cases, maybe there's some changes we can make that'll make the neighborhoods more accurately reflect what we want them to be and protect the charm and ambiance of St. Augustine that makes us so unique. So I think that the neighborhood council is tremendously important and very effective to reach out to the citizens and make sure that we're addressing their concerns. My wife Jessica, who's in the audience, she served as secretary of our Nelmar Terrace neighborhood. And through our campaign, Jessica and I have knocked on over 900 doors in various parts of St. Augustine, every neighborhood we've touched, and it's really given us insights into people's concerns beyond what you hear about in the news and at city commission meetings. So reaching out and utilizing the neighborhood association is very important, and we'll continue to do that.
In the excitement to get started, I forgot to introduce the other members of the planning group for this forum. So we have Tom Dreisbeck back here at the Technology Center, David Shores, Linda Raconce, Nelmar Terrace, and Judith Sarah from Lincolnville. All right, we're going to switch now because that was a question for all candidates around the mission of the neighborhood council. Now, what we're going to do is switch to each candidate's either campaign material or their websites and ask questions particular to that particular candidate. So we're going to start with seat 5. Nancy, on your website you list celebrate culture, preserve history, community balance, accountable government. Please expand on what you mean by accountable government and how you will ensure accountability. 3 minutes.
Okay, thank you very much. This is a big point for me. I never forget who I work for. That's the rule. And what I believe in is, self-evaluation in the city government, increased efficiency, an open government. We need a website that people can use. We need a customer-friendly city government that's pleasant and is helpful and responsive. This is a personal ethic of mine. When people call me, I try to act in the most professional way possible. I respond, I listen, and I follow through to help people no matter how minor the task is. And I'd like to see that work in city government as well. I think that's mostly what I'm, responding to citizens is a big thing for government. And I think also accountability and holding the line on taxes and fees is also important. That we don't spend money that we don't need, hold the line on the budget. Don't overspend, don't waste taxpayer dollars. I mean, I pay taxes. I want $1 worth of service for $1 worth of taxes. So that's another point of accountability. So that's really what I mean.
All right, seat 5. Grant. On your campaign flyer, you list zoning, infrastructure, finances. What does finances mean? And what policy changes will you introduce or support for finances?
Yes, on my flyer I mentioned finances and say transparency, and I think that's very important. One of the things you'll hear me talk a lot about is infrastructure. And infrastructure is our single largest expense. It makes up nearly 50% of our budget. And it's important to have prioritized spending associated with that. And we have various examples in the city where opportunities come up to spend on, say, the Picasso exhibit or the Mumford concert. And those may be great things, but it's difficult to make informed decisions as to what you're giving up when we allocate money to new expenditures when we don't have a prioritized spending plan. And this concept first came up for me probably about a year ago when I heard on the radio about Detroit's pension issues. And then I heard about Jacksonville struggling with their budget issues, and it was pensions again. And our city was going through its budgeting process, so I looked at our website, I looked at the materials provided to the commissioners for our budget, and didn't see any mention of pensions. And so then I looked at the presentation and didn't see any mention of pensions. It broke the budget down by public works, general services, and other areas. So I Googled St. Augustine pensions and came across the financial report for the city and found that we had a $10 million unfunded pension liability. That's a lot of money. And it's not anywhere in any of the budgeting information. And so I talked to the city's actuary who works in Jacksonville and got more information. This past year, it's now $11 million unfunded pension liability. So I think part of what I wanted to capture in that is that we need some information. In order to make informed decisions, we need to know where the city stands in a variety of areas and make prioritized, informed financial decisions. And that's what I mean by financial transparency. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move on to seat 4. Todd, many people have looked at your website and don't understand what your platform is. Please explain your platform other than the 4 vague foci listed on your website so that residents really know what you stand for.
Those 4, we'll talk about 3 of them because 2 of them are both about the finances. But it's core municipal service as our priority. It's customer service driven city, and it's a focus on financially driven decisions. So let's start with the first one. Let's talk about what core municipal services are. Well, if we ask ourselves at the most basic level, what is a municipality supposed to be doing? A municipality, generally, I think most of us would say we need to look at our utilities, our roads, our fire, our water, our police and public safety. And that is where I want to see the priority set. That doesn't mean that other things cannot fit into what our city government does, but those things need to be taken care of first. And how do we do that? We do that with point 3 and 4 on my platform, which is financially driven decisions. One of the things, and this is not, I don't want to have this as an indictment of our current commission, but we have a governance issue with how we use our financial information. Right now, we basically are looking at, the commission itself is basically looking at our financials twice a year, when we approve our budget and when we look at our audit. The rest of the time, as a board, the commission is relying on management. They're saying, you know what, Mark Litzinger and Meredith Bridenstine, they're doing a great job, so we'll rely on them. I've served on several boards from $30,000 budget up to a $600 million budget. And it doesn't matter what the size of the budget is, every single one of them on a monthly basis, we're looking at those financial statements. And then we're making our decisions based on how those decisions fit into the entire financial picture. That's something that we need to change the way that we are making decisions. And it's something with my skill set as a CPA, with my background on several boards, some that are much larger than the city of St. Augustine, I can make that change. And then the second one, it's funny because today, Kathy Brown stopped by my office. And maybe a month ago, I want to say, she told me she was a little irritated that if you call our firm, an electronic voice answers and says, please press 1, please press 2. Because of that input, one of the things we did was our firm listened. We said, one of our clients, one of our friends is not happy with the service that we're doing. Customer service is driven by listening and then responding. And that needs to be a mindset from the top of the city down to the bottom.
Okay, seat 3. No, seat 4, sorry. We're not ready to move on yet. Seat 4, John. You thought you were going to get off the hook. No way. On your website, you list 9 proactive solutions, one of which is update zoning and PUDs. Please explain what specific policies you will introduce or support that accomplishes this solution. Additionally, explain how this will be accomplished without downzoning existing properties.
That's near to my heart. I just came from a planning and zoning board meeting where we were discussing just this particular topic. You know, the biggest thing that faces this city, and we have lots of things that face us, you know, there's economics, there's traffic, there's driving, there's all sorts of things, but the things that worry me are the ones that's hardest to reverse. The things that are hardest to reverse is when you build buildings, bridges, hospitals, 7-Elevens, God knows what, in the wrong place, and once they're there, you can't take them back because they're there for 100 years. Now, our zoning regs are will allow a lot of things to happen in this city that we don't want to happen. I call them minefields. There's not a lot of them out there, but there's enough out there to make a difference. 7-Eleven's one. 100 Flagler Boulevard could potentially be one. How I want to address this is I want to put this back into the laps of the citizens, the neighborhood associations. I want to sit with each one of the associations. We're going to drag the zoning maps off the computer. We're going to get the zoning regs out. And we're going to identify with our magic markers what pieces of property may be vulnerable. And we don't want something to happen that would be detrimental to our community. Now, I know a lot about taking. I know a lot about Bird Harris. Bird Harris is basically a law was put in place by developers, so people who have the use of their property taken away can be compensated for it. So if you do it poorly, you end up paying someone for their lot. They keep the lot, and oh, by the way, they still do what the heck they want to with it, according to the zone that it has. Now, there's a way of changing that without taking. Little ways. You get out in front of it before there's a contract on it, like with the 7-Eleven, and you take, for instance, RS2 zoning. There's a thing in there called by exception, okay? There are things that are allowed, and then there's things that are allowed by exception. We need to look at the RS2 zoning, for instance, and move some of those things that are allowed that may not be so good over into by exception. We haven't taken away the use now. We've just made the use a bit more egregious to get to, because it's got to go to planning and zoning and maybe the city commission. There's ways of tweaking zoning regs without ending up in a courtroom spending a lot of money defending ourselves in a Bird Harris Act action. Now, sometimes we just need to go to Bird Harris. I mean, Fish Island Marina, I would have fought that one right down to the courthouse steps. That was a bad deal. We should have stuck to our guns there. But others, you know, we're going to have to look at and go, okay, how can we address this and avoid those issues? Get out in front of our zoning problems, look at how we can tweak things without being in a taking position. Be smart. Use the laws, understand the laws. If the laws are antiquated, change them, but make sense with the change. Don't go off half-cocked and get us in a bunch of trouble. That costs you a lot of money. I don't want to spend taxpayers' money on these lawsuits. If we're going to be in a lawsuit, I want to pick a good one so we win it, okay? Part of doing business with me is weighing the possibility of lawsuits. That's private sector business. We can't be afraid of doing the right thing because we might be sued. We just got to be careful when we choose what we do.
Before we move on to seat 3, we had at the end of the primary forum a number of people come up and say, when you talk about infrastructure, what do you mean? So we're going to put up a definition here, our definition of infrastructure. Infrastructure definition. Infrastructure includes, but is not limited to, stormwater management, clean drinking water, sidewalks, curbs, streets, underground utilities, city right-of-ways, recycling, satellite parking. It's all of those things. So when we ask a question now about deferred maintenance for infrastructure or anything to do with infrastructure, those are the kinds of things that we're talking about. Okay? Yeah. Well, sewer, yeah. And et cetera. Et cetera. Okay. But having said that, we're moving on to seat 3. Joe, on your website you list 10 tastes of the future. The first one is make sure St. Augustine remains, in capital letters, the world-class destination it has become. The largest budget item facing our city is deferred maintenance for infrastructure. We as residents and local businesses lack proper infrastructure, let alone the capacity to properly service a growing number of tourists. How can this make us world-class?
Well, the thing about infrastructure is if you don't see it, you don't know what's going on. We slip line the sewer lines. How many people know what slip lining is? Yeah, there's a pipe at the end of one street, there's a pipe at the end of the other street, we slip line through the pipe, we don't have to dig up the street. So a lot of that is happening. Now, we did defer maintenance during the worst economic downturn so that we didn't raise taxes. But we're not deferring any maintenance now. We've been aggressively moving along for 3 years. How many of you on Water Street saw the street torn up? How many of you on Masters Drive? If you know your street's torn up, you know it's torn up. Because we don't do about 3 or 4 at a time, because every street we tear up affects a 15-block area in terms of circulation, quality of life, etc. So, if we wanted to, we could tear every street up in town, borrow the money and fix them all at once. But everybody have to move. Now that's a bad quality of life. But nothing is being deferred. Matter of fact, I've got a list right here that in the last 3 years, we have 13 water main projects, 3 going now. We have 23,163 feet of sanitary sewer projects that have been done in the last 3 years. You may not have seen them. We've got underway right now 4,122 feet of stormwater projects. We've got 22 streets that have been redone and resurfaced in the last 3 years. One of you's got to live on one. We've got 12 in process right now, and about 20 scheduled to start after this year. So we're aggressively going after all the infrastructure issues that really matter. But you got to remember St. Augustine, 449 years old. First we started out with buckets and pails to get water to the houses, then ditches, then we had some wooden troughs, then we had clay pipes, then we had terracotta pipes, then we had galvanized pipes, now we're putting in PVC. At 500 years, some of you will be sitting here asking the same question. Won't be me, won't be most of you, but some of you, take my steps in here. So that's what cities do. And we're doing a darn good job. Because my goal is to keep your property taxes low. Right now, single-family homes, mine and yours, pay $2.5 million worth of property tax. Other residential pay another $6.5 million. That's of our $56 million budget, and it should be low. It should be low because we have to have a careful, focused plan to take care of everything, and it's working really well. But when they come to tear up your street, call me because it's going to be horrible. Now, I'll commiserate with you and I'll say, well, by God, at least that good reverse osmosis water plant we've got is getting good, clean water to you. Thank you very much.
Okay, I've let a couple of people slip here who haven't directly answered the question that is asked. So I'm going to change my behavior here, get a little tougher, because we are asking specific questions for specific reasons. Okay, next one, seat 3, Nancy. On your website, you refer to a no surprises government. What does this mean, and how will you ensure it? No, seat 3.
You want to run for mayor?
Okay. We can split. What does a no surprises government mean? I think we all know what a surprises government means because we've been experiencing it for the last 8 years. We've had a Picasso exhibit visited upon us where we spent $1.4 million on the VIC to upgrade it and become an event space to compete with our tourist businesses. We've had a Mumford concert that, according to the accounting, was break even without counting the staff time, which is another $500,000. So what I mean by no surprises is that you have the information you need to understand what the city is thinking about, what it's planning, and your ability to weigh in. Now, how does that happen? There are a lot of things that we need to do. Nancy Sikes-Kline mentioned the website. Our website is the most opaque website that you have ever seen in your life. I tried to find the consolidated financial statement. It took me 10 minutes. So we need to be able to have that information not only accessible, but we need to have it in clear English. If you look at our budget, it's really impossible to figure out what happens with the transfers. So for you to participate in government, you have to know what it's doing. You have to know how to get at the information. Then you need to understand what's being considered and why. We've had people talk about what are our priorities. We need to understand what those priorities are. Infrastructure, for example, we don't have a prioritized list of infrastructure. If, for example, we proceed at the same pace we are with streets, our streets will be up to par, not by the 450th, but by the 500th. And I've done the math. So what we really need to do is have that information accessible. That's what No Surprises is. It's broad communication, it's consistent communication, it's letting you know what's going on and making sure you can weigh in.
Okay, we're going to go back now to seat 5. So Nancy, you'll get your turn now. She's excited. Okay. All right, Grant. You list 3 pillars in your campaign literature: zoning, infrastructure, and finances. We have years of deferred maintenance for infrastructure. This, coupled with sea level rise, creates a huge problem for our city. What policies will you introduce or support that work to mitigate this ongoing and increasing infrastructure challenge?
Thank you. Well, I'm glad we're talking about infrastructure. I am an engineer, and it's what I do for a living. For 15 years, I've helped communities throughout Florida improve their infrastructure. I help them plan for infrastructure. I help them prioritize the projects, find funding for it, and implement those projects. And I work, engineers are often thought of as being kind of lost in the weeds and nuts and bolts people. And my niche in the engineering community has been because I'm one of the few who can effectively communicate and lead a team of engineers. So what I do is I lead the engineers to find solutions, and I work with those city commissions to boil the complex engineering down to these are the key pieces of information you need to make a decision. And I help educate them out on issues out on the horizon so that they aren't reacting, they're being proactive. So we say 5, 10 years out, this is what you need to be doing to prepare. And so yes, we have a lot of challenges. I think it's very important to have someone with my expertise in the City Commission as we address these things over the next 4 years. The city's planning on spending nearly $83 million on capital improvements over the next 5 years. So this election is very important as to who the commission is that serves during that time. And my expertise would be tremendously valuable as part of the commission team making these decisions. I was walking in Fullerwood last night meeting neighbors, and I saw on the road an example of something that I've seen. It's in front of my house. It's all over the city. And it's a sinkhole forming in the road where the asphalt's in place, but it's just sunk down. And what that means is that there's a pipe underneath the road leaking. And it's soil from above the pipe below the road is leaking in, and it creates a sinkhole. Well, there was an asphalt patch put on top of that sinkhole. And then it formed again in another patch. And it was this layer cake of patches over the hole. Well, obviously, there's a problem underneath, and we're just band-aiding the issue. So I think having somebody with my expertise who does this all over the state and recently internationally to ask the tough questions and make sure that we're making proactive decisions rather than reactive. Because if we make reactive decisions on infrastructure, which are our largest expenditures, they become even more expensive. And the longer you defer the investment, the more expensive it becomes. And I know this from experience. So, Rhey, did that answer the question, or is there more, or you can call me out on more?
So policies you're going to introduce.
Well, policies, I think, really goes down to making sure that we are proactive and we have the plans in place in prioritizing the issues. For instance, roads, a prioritized list of road repairs, but it makes no sense to go in and repair a road if the stormwater pipe underneath it is leaking. And it makes no sense to do it if the sewer pipe is leaking. So we need to not look at these infrastructure issues as single issues because they're complex, they're expensive, and there are multiple variables at play.
You'll notice in this next series of questions that we're asking a lot about what policies will you introduce or support. Because a primary role of the commission is to create policy for the city, to set the standards for the city. So that's why we're asking candidates, what will you do or support? Okay, we're going on now to seat 4. Oh, that's twice. I'm not picking on you on purpose. Okay, seat 5, Nancy. Okay, on your website, it lists as another of your pillars, preserve history. In your role on the city commission, what have you actually done to preserve history?
Wow, where do I start again? I have been very busy. I'm a very hard worker, as you probably know. The city of St. Augustine has 7 National Register District neighborhoods. Since I've been a commissioner, we've added 3. We have 6 national landmark on the National Register. I think since I've been a commissioner, we've added 2. 21 National Register individually listed. I can tell you that we just did one. We've got one we did the Constitution Monument, and we've got one on the Bayfront Mini Golf in the pipeline right now. So, that's just a part of what I've done. I've also been able to implement a program, policies for the preservation of St. Augustine publicly owned buildings. In addition to that, I have worked very hard to use my relationships at the state level to obtain grants. When the grant money started flowing, again, there were a number of years we didn't have any grant money coming to the state because of the economy. But when the grant money started flowing again, we immediately jumped in, went to Tallahassee, got grants in, and got over $1 million in grants for the reef repair of Lightner Museum. So, that's a good example of the work that I've done. The other thing is we did get a nice grant for the Waterworks building in North City. It's not actually rehabilitation money, but it is money that will get us on the road to rehabilitation of that building. So as far as preservation is concerned, while a commissioner, I've been very active, and that's not to mention the preservation work that I've done prior to being a commissioner, which was my work on the Lighthouse, on the Bridge of Lions, as well as the state property. I was on the Board of Trustees. I was appointed by Governor Lawton Childs to be on the Board of Trustees for the St. Augustine Historic Preservation Board. Those are the properties that the University of Florida has now under their power. So I know a lot about when you talk about infrastructure, I know a lot about infrastructure. I consider our historic properties part of our infrastructure. And we can talk about water and curbs and sidewalks, and those are also important to me. But let's not forget how important our historic structures are, National Register districts. Many of you probably live in historic houses. That's the vital part of our historic infrastructure. So if you want to talk about some of the policies that I've done, yes, we're working on them, but we do have a strong commitment now and a resolution among the commissioners due to my championship of taking really good care of our publicly owned historic properties. Thank you.
Andrew Schumacher's role is to time and keep the candidates on. Kathy Schumacher sits here to keep me when I go off in the wrong direction. Okay, now we are ready for seat 4. Okay, seat 4, John. From your website, another of your 9 proactive solutions is rebuild aging infrastructure. What policies will you introduce or support that accomplishes this within a reasonable time frame?
Well, rebuilding infrastructure, that's construction work. I do construction work. I used to run an infrastructure division of a large company in the Middle East where we took big tracts of desert and we put in new infrastructure. Basically, what you do is you identify where the problems are. You then categorize the problem as to what order it needs to be fixed in, what affects the most people, who has the most money, or where do you get the money to affect the changes. You know, infrastructure is basically pavement and pipes, okay? Most of it you can't see. What you can see, of course, is the pavement. The problem with the pavement's over top of the pipes, and the pipes are usually what needs fixing. Pavement's cheap, pipes aren't. We're going through this right now. So what I would do is just like I would approach any construction project. I would first identify where my weaknesses are. I would quantify, I would qualify what needs to be done. I would then put it in order of preference based on need, impacts to the most people, and what we have financing for, and where we're going to find the money when we get to the next phase that needs to be done. This is not rocket science. It's really basically putting things in order logically, reasonably, and then applying a way to get it done and pay for it. It's what I do every day in my business. When you build buildings, that's exactly what you do. You're projecting out ahead of you, sometimes years, sometimes several years. Infrastructure is like that because it's been there forever, it's been updated constantly. Everybody and their brothers worked on every possible piece of pipe that you can imagine in the 20th century is buried out there, and some of it from the 19th century. So you have to have a broad understanding of what it is that you're dealing with. I have that understanding. I know what it's like to run a gravity sewer or force main or raw water pipe or install gradients or what have you. It's what I do. It's what I did for years. So we need to basically get started. We are started. There's a lot of work going on here. Don't kid yourself. We've had some deferred maintenance, but there's a lot going on right now. And I have to commend the City Commission and our city staff. They've got the ball rolling. We just got to keep it rolling, and we got to make it roll in the right direction. And that's basically having people to understand what the problem is, and understand what infrastructure means, and understand how to get from point A to point B, and be able to fund it and do it with a critical path that has a time frame involved. Now, one thing about digging holes in the ground, when it rains, they fill up with water. Okay? So there is no silver bullet to this particular profession. It's pretty rudimentary, okay? If it rains, you come to a stop. If it's dry, you make production. So there's lots of things that play into infrastructure, but at the end of the day, it's just construction. And I do it all the time.
Okay, Commission seat 4. Todd, on your website, you refer to a city focused on core municipal services at the top of its priority list. Please define core municipal services and explain what policies you will introduce or support that ensure top of its priority list.
I addressed this a little bit in the last question, but I'll just share a story with you. I was walking in a neighborhood here in St. Augustine, and I came up to a home where a current police officer works. And I asked her, I said, you know, what's your number one concern? And she said code enforcement. And I said, well, that's kind of odd that a police officer would be concerned about code enforcement. And she said, we just don't have enough now. And this goes to the point of exactly what we're talking about here. Public safety, police force is one of the most important core municipal services that a city can provide. And what are we doing about that? To me, when you talk to police officers, we are spread thin. We might be staffed just fine for a normal city of 14,000, but all of us know that we have a college downtown. We have tourists coming through our city. We have some very unique needs that a normal 14,000 person city does not have. And when you talk to the police officers, you will hear them say, you know what, I love the overtime that we get from working festivals on the weekends. I love the overtime. I love being out in the community, but I just can't do it every weekend. And how do we fix that? Where does the policy come from? Everything, you've all heard the saying, follow the money. And it comes down to aligning what our policies are with what our budget is. And it's something that's a very simple governance policy that you put in place, that the commission needs to set strategy, align a budget with that strategy, and then let management implement that strategy and that budget. And when you have things, for example, like public safety, where you talk to the very people that are implementing it and they say there's not enough, then we need to adjust our budget and our policies.
Thank you, Todd. All right, let's move on to Commission Seat 3. Nancy, the economy is now heating up and investment in St. Augustine is rapidly increasing. In order to ensure that a debacle like 7-Eleven does not occur in another of our neighborhoods, how will you ensure that updating our zoning is a high priority?
I think we've already heard a very good description from John about a method and approach to updating zoning. The question is, how do you make it happen? How do you make sure that this is a top priority? What I've heard when I've talked to people who walk neighborhoods is that there are really 3 top priorities, 3 things that are on people's minds. One is traffic, one is zoning, one is infrastructure. Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, I know, I don't know what it was. So, a mechanism to do that, one of the things that makes having problems attacked in a way that will solve them, finding the low-hanging fruit quickly, and then having it mesh with a longer-term objective. Let's think about zoning. My goal would be to have each commissioner take one of these big 3s as their champion, and working with staff and engaging, for example, the neighborhood associations on zoning so that you're continuously getting input from citizens to determine what the quick fixes are and what are the things that need to be addressed quickly. For example, what are the hot spots in the neighborhoods that need attention quickly, tweak the zoning, and then on a longer term basis, the reality is we haven't touched our zoning in whether you say 25 years or 30 years. The comprehensive plan is supposed to be reviewed every 7 years. From what I can tell, it hasn't been reviewed at all. Those are matters of policy that need to be put in place and need to be enforced. So it's really a 2-pronged approach to solving any of these problems so that we get quick hits where we can get them and have the right processes and policies in place to ensure it doesn't repeat itself. We could fix the 7-Eleven or fix 100 Flagler, but it'll be whack-a-mole. We'll just keep doing it again if we don't have a comprehensive approach. So that would be my recommendation.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, Commission Seat 3. Joe, in your role on the City Commission and as mayor, you have been criticized for being reactive. How have you proactively driven appropriate and timely zoning ordinances for our city?
Thank you, Rhey. Zoning ordinances in our city are supposed to be reactive. When something happens in your neighborhood that you don't like, you have to take a look at it. Because it's probably been zoned that way for a long, long time. The Flagler Boulevard parcel was zoned that when Gerald Ford was president. People bought houses in there long after that, and the zoning was an issue for them, I guess. Nobody ever called me about it. I'm in the grocery every day, I'm in the restaurants every night. You just come by and see. Take a look at the zoning. Now, if we're going to look at what we should do in neighborhoods to downgrade the commercial property that borders your residential neighborhood, that's going to take some planning. That's going to take some expert advice. You can start with the Planning and Zoning Board, which is where it started with the Comprehensive Land Use Plan. I was on there at the time, the chairman. And so we made recommendations to the City Commission of how we wanted these neighborhoods to be constructed. That's why there's citizens boards. They're made up of you. That's where it needs to start. Now when we have neighborhood associations, give your input to the citizens board. That's how the process works. That's their job. And once they review it and make a recommendation, they bring it to the city commission so it can be made law. And once it's made law, it'll hopefully address the issues that we all agree are in our best interest. And then another 10 or 15 years, something else will pop up. And we'll take a look at that. If you don't react, you're not going to move our neighborhoods forward. If you've got a desire to get rid of all rental uses of single-family homes in your neighborhood, give that a thought. We'll see what it takes to make it work. It'll be difficult. We require everybody in the neighborhood to have a single-family home with no rentals. But we can take a look at that. There is nothing that can't be looked at. We have people asking for an administrative rezoning of the property in Flagler, on Flagler Boulevard. That's going to be a tough one, because that's a taking of land. Yes, we'll get sued. But we've been sued before. We get sued weekly. So don't be afraid to stand up and say what you want. Then we take it to the Planning and Zoning Board. John Tate, he sits on there now. They review that stuff all the time. What should we do? And then make a recommendation to the City Commission. That's how the process works. And I can't change it. I would change it if I could. Because it's a good, solid process that keeps our laws stable, the ordinances stable, and our planning stable. And we'll take a look at it all. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe.
Please turn your cell phones off, any electronic devices. Thank you.
Yeah, somebody back there forgot to do that. They think it's the buzzer going off up here and they want to, no, we're not through with them yet. Okay, we're going to take a switch here just for a minute and have a 1-minute question for all 6 candidates. And that's because a lot of people this time saying, okay, all we hear about in these campaigns is what's wrong. How about telling us what's right? Okay, so we're going to look now, and this is the order we're going to go in, and Nancy Sikes-Kline, this is you first this time, then Grant, then Todd, John, Joe, and then Nancy Shaver. Name one thing that our city does very well, not the county, nor the VCB, nor the TDC, but our city. Okay? Nancy.
Well, that's a hard one, because all we've been doing is talking about all the negatives. But I would say one of the things that our city does very well is it takes care of itself very well with its historic properties, and that is my strength. I think that, do you want more than one, or would you like me to talk more about historic preservation, or what a great job we do about taking care of our historic preservation, our historic buildings? Well, we do. We take really good care of we take good care of them. I believe it's a community core value. You know, it's something that I believe that we have consensus in the community and on the commission. I'd like to see us execute the historic preservation plan that we have funded for next year. I mean, after the 450th is over. So I think that it's a core value for us. It's important for us, and I think that we do a very good job.
Well, I think St. Augustine is an amazing place. That's why I'm here. That's why we all live here. My wife Jessica and I moved to St. Augustine 14 years ago, right after college, and just fell in love with it. And you know, we live here because it's a small, livable, beautiful city with amazing history, wonderful architecture. Our daughter Mabel's 4.5. She's growing up playing on the fort lawn. This is an amazing city. And I think that's why we're all here. That's why we're all running, is that we love it, and we want to do our part to preserve it and protect it. And I think that that's the challenge. It's a great place. As the economy recovers, we're going to be faced with new challenges. We're talking about some of those today. But I think the challenge for all of us is to just put in place the protections to make sure that we don't lose what unique thing we have here. And then when my daughter grows up...
What are we doing now? Right now, what we do well. Not what we're saying.
What are we doing well? Well, I've been involved in various boards. I'm on the visioning committee. I was on planning and zoning, and I really have gotten to know city staff quite well. And I really do like the city staff. I think they work hard and do a good job.
Okay.
Now remember, this is not something that we need to change or do differently. This is what we're doing now that is effective, that really works. Okay, Todd.
I think if you look around right now, this is a perfect example of what we're doing well. The neighborhood councils, the interaction with the community. I think this forum itself speaks volumes to what we're doing right. And what is that? We're listening. The leadership, all of us that are up here are here for one reason, to keep St. Augustine great and to see it continue to be great. And how do we do that? We do that by listening. And this is a perfect example. Ray's group with the neighborhood association, Tom's group with Sands. You can go through all the different neighborhood associations. That's one of the great things that we're doing right now.
For neighborhood council.
John.
We do a lot of things well. We do history well. We entertain well. We have a beautiful place that we take care of well. Even the most important thing we do well, we look after each other. Every one of you out there, we're doing well. This is the most fantastic city when it comes to the people that live in it. It's what attracted me to it. I came here, it was like no other city I've ever been. Not like Key West, not like Savannah. It doesn't matter whether you're born here or not, been here 20 generations or not. You're here, you put your hand out, someone reaches out and takes it. That's what we do well. We are St. Augustinians, and we do it well.
Thank you, John. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Ray. Well, you know, I agree with all those, but we also know how to make money here. We generate revenue that's not on the back of the taxpayers. We generate it from our mooring field, $300 a ball a month. We generate it at our marina. We generated from our parking garage, all that money for the parking garage, 97% is from tourists. We use that for our 450th and tourist functions. We generate revenue from our parking system, surface parking, second largest revenue source into our general fund. My goal is to keep the burden off of me and you as residential homeowners. And to do that, you have to be entrepreneurial, and we're very good at that. We can explore more revenue sources like the food and beverage tax, because we have the revenue coming through here, $766 million a year coming into St. Johns County. All we got to do is put our hand in that stream a little more, saves you from taxes. Thank you very much.
Nancy?
I'm not going to do any fact checking on what you just heard. So what I think we do well, I came here 5 years ago with my late husband, and we knew that it was going to be his last winter, and we picked this never having been here before. We've never been in the town. We bought the house sight unseen. And what this city does extremely well is it's a community. It's a community that reaches out and touches people. It's the kinds of things that we're doing right now. Everything, the way that we interact, the way that we talk with each other, the way we care. That's what makes this an extraordinary city. And one other small piece, which certainly has been very helpful to me, is we do a great job on the sunshine laws getting information out. It's why I'm standing here. So it's a great city. Love it. We all do. And we just want to make it everything it can be.
Thank you, Nancy. Okay, we just wanted to remind you that there are a lot of things that our city does well. Okay, now back to specific questions for candidates. Seat 5. Nancy, our city has years of deferred infrastructure maintenance, plus your advocacy for sea level rise. This is an enormous burden for our city. What policies will you introduce or support that work to reverse this ongoing challenge?
Well, okay. So, infrastructure. We're going to talk about deferred infrastructure. We have paving that we haven't been doing. I want to say that last year I got $100,000 in the budget to do paving. We have over $600,000 in this budget year, and then in our $82.7 million capital plan, 5-year capital plan that is, we have another $2 million in paving. We also have stormwater upgrades, we have force mains going on in West Augustine. I think that what we need to do is keep working on these things. Obviously, an $82.7 million 5-year capital plan we're not going to get to it all. But what we need to do is start in January. We just adopted our capital plan, which includes infrastructure, among other things. But let's do, what I propose is we start in January, we start looking at the capital plan and workshop it. What we need to do is we need to look at it, strategize. Right now, what we have is just something that staff gave us and said, well, this is what we want to do. But I think we really need to roll up our sleeves and dig in and really get into the details. And we'll talk about pensions, and we'll talk about stormwater upgrades. We'll talk about historic preservation plan and what we're going to do about those buildings. And we'll talk about sidewalks, adding sidewalks. We'll talk about bicycle lanes, hopefully. So that's really what I would say.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Nancy. Seat 5, Grant. You have served on PZB and have publicly stated that current zoning codes required you to make decisions with which you were not pleased. What will you do to rectify this situation?
Run for city commission? I can stretch it out if you'd like, but yeah, I served on the Planning and Zoning Board for 6 years. It was an amazing experience. I learned a lot about the city. I learned a lot about our zoning codes and our ordinances, but I also saw a lot of situations where we had to decide cases based on the code. The Planning and Zoning Board is basically like a judge and a jury, interpreting the code to see if a project fits it or not. And the code is administered by the City Commission. And there were various instances that came up where the community would come out and, you know, neighbors didn't want a project, but when I would look at it like a judge would, looking at the codes, I would say, well, unfortunately, this project doesn't match what the community wants. But to say no to it is taking away somebody's property rights, which we don't want to do that either. And after enough of these cases came up and kind of looking out into the future, it was like, okay, I want to do something to address this. And I want to go out and improve our zoning code. I want to be a city commissioner where we have the authority to do that and the leadership to do that. And leadership to me is really looking out on the horizon and seeing what obstacles or what opportunities are out there. And when you see them far out, you have a lot of options available to deal with them. They're much easier to navigate rather than being reactionary. I want to be proactive. That's what I do as an engineer, is I look out on the horizon, I help educate leaders about what the issues are out there. And these are the steps that we need to take to do them, and I build buy-in and consensus. And I think that that's why I wanted to run for city commission, is I saw this obstacle out there. And in some cases, there's things we won't be able to do something about unless we want to take away people's property rights, which I don't think is something that we want to do. But I think we need to make educated decisions. And, you know, it's not an overall rezoning of the city, but there are instances where our city is changing. We're now seeing a lot of weddings coming to town. We're seeing events coming to town. And maybe our code doesn't accurately reflect some of the types of businesses we're coming in. And I'm on the visioning committee, and we're talking about, you know, maintaining what's unique about the city, and maintaining the ambiance, the small, livable character. So let's make sure that our zoning code accurately reflects that. Let's make sure our zoning code is written around the types of tourist businesses that we want, so that we avoid becoming a carnival town. Let's make sure those protections are in place, and that's why I'm running for city commission.
You mentioned a couple things about the visioning, and Jeanette and I and other people, it's like, we didn't hear that. No violation of the Sunshine Law. Right, there you go, okay. One of the really good things is that we can have a forum like this And it can be a civil forum where we can ask each other tough questions and listen to answers, and nobody is booing, yelling. That's a great thing. And I compliment all of you as residents interested in this process for the way that you are handling yourselves in this forum. So for all of you, thank you. Okay, we're going to move on now to, yes, Commission seat 4. Todd. Budgets can be changed, finances fixed, but once built, bricks and mortar are permanent. Considering this, what policies will you introduce or support that manage the growth of Flagler College buildings, not only as non-tax-paying entities, but as encroachers into historic neighborhoods?
You know, we've been talking about planning and zoning a lot, and Flagler fits right into that. Flagler is an entity that happens to be the biggest footprint that we see downtown. So the zoning laws affect them just like they affect a homeowner, just like they affect another business. So what we need to do with Flagler is exactly what we do with every other entity in downtown. We need to hold them to the ordinances that we have in place. We need to hold them to our zoning requirements. And when things come before us, we should listen to residents and then apply those zoning laws just like we do with anything else. The two areas I would say you would need to do with Flagler is you need to rely on the Planning and Zoning Board, and you need to rely on our legal counsel. Those two groups can help us through the process to meet the needs of the community. Flagler is simply one stakeholder in the community, but there are 14,000 of us who are also stakeholders in the community. So when that comes into play, we need to look at those two things. We need to look to the planning and zoning, and we need to look to our attorneys.
Thank you. Okay, Commission seat 4. John. Our city has suffered from a lack of dialogue and networking with Flagler College and St. Johns County, much to our detriment. How do you intend to correct this lack of collaboration with entities that have a direct impact on our city?
Well, simple as communication. It's opening up dialogues. It's making yourself available and making sure they make themselves available, because I hate to use a term, you make an offer you can't refuse, but at the end of the day, the city of St. Augustine has leverage, it has a presence, it is important to the county, it's important to Flagler College. Flagler lives inside of us, we live inside of the county. When you see an advertisement all coming down the road on 95, it's a lot about St. Augustine, then they invite you to St. Johns County. We are the key to St. Johns County. Contrary to a lot of people who are part of the county might feel, we are still the draw card. That being the case, we have leverage with the City County Commission, which we need to exercise. We have leverage with Flagler College. They live inside of us. We don't yet live on their campus. We've got to make sure that never happens. It's all about dialogue. You bring people to the table, you look them straight in the eye, and you have conversations. They're not rude, they're not mean, they're just factual. It's business, and we need to conduct our business with the county, with Flagler College, from a position of strength, and we have a position of strength. We are in the catbird seat when you really think about it. In the county, we certainly are, because we're their biggest draw. With Flagler College, they're our tenant. They live inside our city limits. Flagler College is a wonderful institution. Don't let anyone walk in here thinking I'm anti-Flagler. I'm not. I'm 98% love them. God knows what Ponce would look like if it wasn't Flagler College. Having said that, there is a 2% issue that needs to be discussed. Okay? We all know what that is. It's predatory land acquisition, taking things off the tax rolls. To some degree, the conduct of their students, and of course parking. Okay, that comes into it. But these are all items that can be addressed, and we can find a satisfactory resolution. Not perfect for them, and certainly not perfect for us, but a heck of a lot closer than what we have now. As far as the county is concerned, hey, you know, they've got to realize that we are St. Augustine, and St. Augustine is St. Johns County. We have a lot going for us.
Thank you, John. Okay, we're going to move on now to seat 3. Joe, in the primary forum, you stated that you voted for the controversial Flagler College PUD because it was the law. However, for the Critchlow PUD on St. George Street, you voted against it. Please explain what you mean by it was the law in one case, but not in the other, especially when PUDs are a tool, not a law.
Thank you, Ray. Sure, every PUD, and that's a planned unit development. That's where somebody wants to do something with the land that the current zoning does not allow them in all ways. Setbacks, size, uses, etc. So they apply for a planned unit development. When I came on the city commission, it was announced by Mayor Gardner that that was a wonderful planning tool, and I agree with it. And so we began to use it more and more. That's what brought us the Columbia restaurant, for instance. And the building was proposed right there across from the cathedral on St. George Street in a style and a design that did not fit in any way. There was a lot of outcry against it, and I did vote against it. I voted against it because of the need to seal the lower levels for water intrusion. Kind of an odd result. I don't know if it's been successfully used yet. The fact that those corners and the architecture that we use in those areas is second period Spanish colonial. Did it exist at one time? Sure. But it certainly doesn't fit into what we're all required to build to now. And I didn't think the architectural style fit the area. You can reject a PUD. The Flagler College PUD, that was a tough vote, I won't lie to you. It came to the city commission twice, I believe. It came to the planning and zoning board 3 times. It came to HARB twice. Each time it was approved, we sent it back to get it modified. Remember Vice Mayor Sikes-Kline said, I want this, this, and this, and she was right. And they provided them. Took away our argument. They complied with the law in every way that we asked them. And when that happens, I don't know. I've got to go with it. I have to vote for it. Was it hard? Sure. But just because I didn't like it doesn't mean I can't vote against it. Because I want you to be able to rely on me to tell you what I think, to do what the law requires me to do. And if you want me to violate the law, you vote for somebody else, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Joe. All right, Commission seat 3. Nancy, you have campaigned on improving city infrastructure. It will require millions of dollars to remedy this problem that exponentially rises every year. What are you actually going to do, and how will you finance it?
I love this question. The infrastructure situation that we are looking at requires 3 things. It requires an assessment, so we know exactly where we are on each piece of our infrastructure. We don't now. Everything that we're doing is ad hoc, reactive, and this kind of stuff. So once you have an assessment, you understand what your problem is, how big it is, and how you're going to solve it. What we obviously are going to be doing is integrated infrastructure planning, which we don't do now. So you have the assessment, you have the plan, you understand the cost, and you understand the priorities. At that point, you know what the nut is. How big is it? My best guess, $100 million. Can we afford $100 million of infrastructure in the next 5 years? No. So the question becomes, how much can the city absorb at a given moment in time, over a period of time? How much does it cost, and how do you fund it? I have never seen a budget that you couldn't get 10% out of. Our current budget is constructed with a 5% pad. What you want to do is manage that budget so that you can pay the debt service you need to do the infrastructure in a stepwise way over a reasonable period of time to get us up to where we need to be. It's not that hard. It's really hard if you don't want to look at it and don't want to assess it. And we can do this. And it's what we have to do. We're stewards of this place. It's 450 years old, but what makes it special is that it's been a hometown for us. We need to take care of the hometown.
Thank you, Nancy. Now, this next one is not a question. It's purely a statement of concern. A lot of people send in this concern, and we looked at it, and we sat down, and we thought, oh, gee, what do we do with that? Because it's a big issue that is very complex. So we're not putting it up tonight as a question. We're putting it up as something for these 6 folks running for office to think about. Because it's going to be on the radar screen of the Neighborhood Council and the Neighborhood Association, even though we do not know how to fix it. Okay, let's look at that. Statement of concern, not a question. All candidates to think about a solution. We as the Neighborhood Council and our 10 neighborhood associations are concerned that we pay an extraordinary amount of sales tax from tourists through our local businesses, but receive so little in return. Our city is the golden egg for the county and the region, but the golden goose is struggling, and the burden is passed on to tax-paying residents. A remedy to this imbalance must be found ASAP. So, really for everyone to think about. Okay, now, moving on, this next one is going to be for all 6 candidates. Oh, and we're going to take it in order of seat 3, then seat 4, then seat 5. For you to be the preferred candidate of choice, what 2 skills or abilities do you possess that your opponent does not? Nancy?
First would be data and math. Running a city and looking at a city requires looking at the money that's coming in, how you need to spend it, and set policies that are appropriate. So that's what I've done my whole life. So, and that absolutely, I think, distinguishes me from my opponent. The other skill that I have is my life has been one of listening, taking in all this data and facts, sharing it with people, and creating practical solutions. I didn't get paid if I couldn't deliver on that kind of work. And that is really the work of government. It's the work of democracy. It's the work of everyone in this room. I draw the distinction between a resident and a citizen. I need to listen to you. We need to listen to each other. You need to have, we talked a little bit about what the city doesn't tell us and how our surprises, get that information to you. We discuss it. Once you see the facts, the decisions become fairly easy and fairly straightforward, even to tough problems. And then the next piece is, what do the solutions look like? What can you afford? What works for people? What maintains and protects the magic of this place? So those, I think, are the 2 skills I have that I would like to offer.
Thank you, Rhey. The first one is experience. 47 years, 34 years in business, 4 years planning and zoning, chairman, 2 years as a city commissioner, and 8 years as mayor. There's no learning curve here. We can't afford a learning curve. Sure, she has wonderful skills, and I know she does, and I'd love to see her on a city board, planning and zoning part, begin to learn from the ground up. I think she'd be excellent. We cannot afford to squander my experience. So, the next thing will be relationships. Relationships at the county level, relationships at the state level. And they're important. You can see they're important by the questions he asks. I've known Mike Weincheck, the county administrator, since he came to work here. I know all of the commissioners. I know our elected officials. It was not an accident that John Thrasher called me to Tallahassee to negotiate the settlement of D&B's encroachment in our neighborhoods. We walked out of that room with a moratorium permanently on all adjacent neighborhoods. If you don't think that's important, you ask the people that live nearby. But that's built on years and years of relationships. And I think that's valuable. And I think that that's something that you need to think about when you go in the voting booth. Whose experience are you going to rely on? And I appreciate your vote. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Okay, moving on to speak forward. John?
Well, it boils down to two things, experience and skill set. I came here 28 years ago. 26 years ago, I bought my first house and restored it. And since then, I've restored hundreds of houses in this town. I've done 9 of the bed and breakfasts, many of the restaurants. I've done fountains, I've done monuments, I've done all sorts of things in this town. I've been part of the organization here, the people that actually restored the bricks and mortar here. I got blood in the bricks and mortar of this town because I've done it. I was appointed my first board in '89. I was a Board of Justice Appeal, chairman of that, code enforcement, chairman of that. Planning and zoning for 8 years, chairman of that. Back to planning and zoning, which I just finished tonight. That's the experience, lots of experience. Had an inspection company when I first came here, had over 9,000 clients in this city. Many of you sitting out there probably inspected your home when you bought it. You trust me enough to buy your home based on what I told you. You probably trust me enough to be your city commissioner. Home's usually the biggest investment you make. Let's talk about skill set. I'm a problem solver. I used to work overseas. I was the guy they called when they had a project in the weeds in some unknown part of the world that was upside down. I was the person they sent in to find a solution to pull it out of the weeds, put it back on track, get it profitable again. That was fun, particularly places like Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Somalia. Let me tell you about that one. Anyway, I'm in the construction business. We pull thousands of components together with hundreds of workers. We work with architects, engineers, and we project a year down the road to bring it all together to provide a product that a client is happy with that will last 100 years, and then we make a profit and have enough money to warranty it. Those are all the things that good problem solvers do, and people who are successful in my business do it well. I'm not unique, there's a lot of us, but we are all very well suited for government because we know how to multitask and fix problems, and we know how to identify people that can help us and choose the right ones to put in the right places.
There are two things, and the first one is one that goes together, depth and breadth. And then the second one is an unending level of energy. Those two things set me apart and give me a skill set that my opponent does not have. So let's talk about the first one. Let's talk about depth and breadth and why those two have to go together. Because tonight we've heard over and over and over one topic from my opponent. It is everything is building, planning, and zoning. There are other topics in this city. My experience has been across the community. It has been on the Flagler Hospital Board for the last 8 years. It has been as the treasurer in a very bad economic time for the St. Johns County, St. Augustine Chamber of Commerce. It has been on the board for the St. Johns County Visitors and Convention Bureau. It has been with Take Stock in Children, mentoring a youth for 8 years. The breadth of my experience covers the entire community. It covers a multitude of different topics. That sets me apart. The second piece is the depth of the knowledge. My experience with finances as a CPA, as the managing partner of a very well-respected CPA firm here in town, gives me the depth. The second part of this, so that's depth and breadth. The second part is the energy level. Every one of you out here can see that there is a difference in energy level. It doesn't matter if it's running a marathon, it doesn't matter if it is walking neighborhoods, it doesn't matter if it is listening to you. My energy level is not going to fade. I've been an endurance athlete my whole life, and I'm going to continue to be one.
Thank you, Todd. All right, Grant, over to you.
All right, well, I'd first like to start with, this is kind of a loaded question. You know, obviously, I'm running based on my qualifications. You know, so I don't like talking bad about the other opponent. I don't think it's professional. So I'm going to focus on myself. Okay. The first thing is really that I think it's important to elect leaders for the issues of the time. And our issue, as you've heard tonight, is going to be infrastructure in the next 4 years. We're going to be spending tens of millions of dollars on infrastructure. It's huge. This is what I do. I work with communities all over the state of Florida. I previously worked with the city of St. Augustine, helping them on infrastructure, until I decided that I could do better for the city as a city commissioner, and I resigned from my position with the engineering firm that did the work for the city and went to work for another company. It's what I do. I help cities get funding. We talked about how we're going to fund this. I recently attended a ribbon cutting for a community in South Florida that I helped get $20 million to improve their water system. I understand infrastructure, so I think that's the first differentiator. The second differentiator is that in my job, I am an effective leader, and that's leadership of leading design teams to overcome complex engineering challenges, and that's providing leadership to city commissions to help them look on the horizon and identify issues before their crises. We do a lot of reactionary work here in St. Augustine, which is mainly managing crises, whether it's our infrastructure now or traffic issues. You can start to see these patterns of zoning. And so I think part of the leader is being able to look on the horizon and see these issues, and then an effective leader, in reality, we're only one vote. The ability to effectively and logically communicate why this is an important issue and why we need to make this decision to help win the buy-in from not only the voters, but also your fellow commissioners is imperative. Otherwise, it's just a wasted vote because it takes 3 votes to do anything on the city commission. So thank you.
Thank you, Grant.
Oh boy, I like this one. Well, guts for one thing. I stand up for what I believe in. I absolutely, if I see something that I don't like, I will say it. Okay, so thank you, Grant. You know, it's wonderful. I love your experience. We are very different, obviously, in so many ways. But my basic skills, I think what I have to offer to you and what you're interested in is I am very interested in what you're interested in, and that is why I'm very responsive. I've always stood up. When I say guts, I say I stand up for the neighborhoods. I stand up for maintaining a livable city and making it better. That is the main focus that I have. I have a background in urban planning. In fact, I'm an urban planning consultant, land use planning consultant. My expertise is in zoning, comprehensive planning, historic preservation, and transportation. All of these issues I can handle. I am not, you know, this is, it just takes guts. And you get guts by experience. You don't just walk into the job and know everything. You know, we all sit here and we all talk about it, but it takes there's a learning curve with this. And frankly, you know, with this capital plan that we've got, which by the way, I was the one that asked for the capital plan. And with all the money that we need to allocate, we're gonna need someone with guts. Someone that can stand up and someone that we can't afford to have, you know, learning on the job right now. There's too much, there's an urgency to this. So I feel like the skills that I have, the gumption or grits or whatever you want to call it, the know-how that I've earned over the last 6 years, it's going to serve you well. It's a great asset, and I urge you to vote for me. Thank you.
Okay, I see a number of you out there starting to get dreary-eyed, and you're getting campaign weary, but we're coming into the closing question here. All right, and this is going to be the same for all 6 candidates. Closing statement, and we're going to do it seat 5, seat 4, seat 3. What would you like to say to the audience in closing? You have 2 minutes. Nancy, you're back on.
Thanks. Okay, so I want to say to you is, I love this city. I have a passion for the city. I've been here for 30 years. I've been working in this community as a land planner for 30 years. I've been doing community service, everything from the Lighthouse, and you heard this before, to the state properties, to historic properties, to transportation planning. I've been doing transportation planning for the last 5 years. It's 5.5, 6 years. Now I'm chairman of the TPO, the North Florida Transportation Planning Organization. I have an opportunity to help solve traffic problems in this community. I brought millions of dollars, directly benefit the city in sidewalks and paving, intersection improvements. These are all important, drainage. These are all important things for us. I have a lot of, I want to just tell you how great I am. I'm great. But anyway, I'll kidding aside. I mean, really, this room needed something, because it's kind of gotten serious in here. We've had 2 hours of seriousness, so let's enjoy ourselves a little bit. So, but I do love the community, and I do support the neighborhoods, and I do support the residents, and I really, I'm a people person. I love the work that I do listen, I do respond, I follow through, I'm there for you, I want to help you, because I love people. It's just, what sets me on fire is serving you guys. So, thank you again. I hope you vote for me.
Well, I think it's clearly evident that all of us are doing this because we care about the community and we want to make it a better place. My wife and I, we love it here. There are things that I see as a professional engineer and through my service on city boards that concern me about St. Augustine's future. And when I think about my daughter growing up, I want her to have the same experience that Jessica and I did when she returns from college, that she falls in love with St. Augustine too. But I think there are some issues out there that could affect the important balance that we have in St. Augustine, and that's the balance between our residential quality of life, visitors, and making it an attractive place for business. And I think that the issues that we're facing that we all talked about, infrastructure and zoning, those are my experience. It's what I do as a professional, is help communities with these infrastructure issues. I've got 6 years of experience as former chair of the Planning and Zoning Board, so I have the qualifications to help St. Augustine through these issues. I think, I really just want to make sure that we're making good decisions with our future, because these things like infrastructure and deferred maintenance, those are really hidden taxes on our future. It really affect the viability of the city for years and years to come. So I want to thank you all for being a great audience tonight, and please, if you'd like to find out more information, go to grantmrlee.com, which apparently that website was very easy to obtain for only $10, so it wasn't in my demand. So please, I would appreciate you really considering me on November 4th for your vote, and think about the issues that we're going to be facing over the next 4 years, and who is best qualified to lead the city on that. Because leadership should come from our city commission, and our city commission should have the expertise to lead. Thank you.
My dad is in the audience today, and he's the reason I'm here, for a lot of reasons. In 1999, that was intended. That was intended. In 1990, he took a job here. He moved our family here. I went away to college. I would come back every summer. I interned with an accounting firm that I now am the managing partner in. And when I came back to town, I immediately got involved. And I got involved in several different types of service across our community. I've named several of them already. Other things like the Rotary Club, setting up a youth summer camp for our running club. But this, as the city commissioner, is truly unique, because this touches all of us. Our city needs to have 5 commissioners who act as the board of trustees for our city. They help strategize, they help prioritize, and they help lead where we are going to go. And right now, we have a mayor who's a lawyer. We have another commissioner who's a lawyer. We have a preservationist on the board. We have an architect. But one thing that affects every piece of what we do as a city is the financial piece. And that is a skill set that we are lacking right now. And that is not anything, it's not an indictment against our current commission, but it's a skill set that even at Fortune 500 companies, they're required to have someone on the board who is of financial mind. Myself as a CPA, I bring that to this city. I bring a skill set that is going to affect every decision that we make, every decision that is going to lead us into the future. Because of that, I want you to vote for Todd Neville on November 4th. And thank you.
Thank you. I came here 28 years ago, was going to stay here 3 years. Guess what? I'm still here running for City Commission. I've invested a lot of my time and my energy and my creativity in this town, city. I've restored many buildings, as I said earlier, and I've touched the city in many ways. It's become so much part of me that it is me. The reason I'm running for this office is because my business is unfinished. I want 4 years to do what I think needs to be done to make St. Augustine a little more prepared to go into the future. And I think I'm uniquely equipped for that because I come from a business that's going to greatly affect the business of the city in the future. This development is growth. I'm not anti-growth, I'm not anti-development. I'm for smart growth, I'm for smart development. I understand infrastructure, and oh, by the way, I've run a successful construction company for 40 years. I know a lot about finance. Trust me, I create wealth. I hire CPAs to keep track of my wealth for me. The reality is I'm doing this because I think we're at a pivotal place. And I think my skill set and my experience would be a great help to guide the city through the next 4 years. Because in the next 4 years, we can set certain precedents that can carry on to the 500th. If we don't get wise about some things, like the brick and mortar issues of planning and zoning, or zoning laws, we're going to see a change. It's going to be exponential. We're protected at HP. You take one step outside of HP, you can build a geodesic dome, as Joe said earlier. Anyway, I want you to vote for me because I care. I want you to vote for me because I've got the skill set. My website is Vote for John Valdes. You have a lot of stuff on it. You can read about it. And I also want to assure Todd I'm not going to hold his youth against him.
Okay, Joe, talk about.
Well, I don't know who's older, John or me. I think probably John's older first. You know, when I became mayor in 2006, you get to articulate your philosophy about how you want to be the mayor. Even though you're one vote, you still have to articulate because you're holding the gavel. I said, you know, I learned a great lesson in a church planning organization. We had a consultant come in from board president. She said, this is what you do. You identify the positives, what you're known for. And you focus on those and bring them forward. As you do that, the challenges will present themselves. What you don't do is focus all the time on the negatives. What do we got to fix? What do we don't like? It kills your energy. It kills your camaraderie. It kills your community spirit. Now, if we're being invaded, then that kind of threat, we can all rise up together. But this city is doing wonderfully. Until this election came along, all I heard from people was, man, I just love St. Augustine. Everything is going so well. We're the most financially stable we've ever been in the history of the city. If we weren't, we couldn't have borrowed $10 million at low interest to fix all of Roberry Street at one time. That's a blessing. Do we have challenges? Sure we have challenges, like every city. But we have an abundance of blessings which we want to keep moving forward. Why are we on everybody's top 10 list? Because of who we are and what we've created here. It's not just because it's the nation's oldest city. Half the people didn't know that and probably still don't know that. And they're coming next year. But this is my opponent. I agree with her. A magical city. When she moved here 4 years ago, I've been a commissioner for 2 years or 5 years, whatever it is. I've been a commissioner and mayor for a while. It is a magical city. You want to keep it that way. So you know what you're going to get when you vote for me? You get everything that's happened in the last 8 years and going forward. So I appreciate you consider that. And let's keep it moving. Thank you very much.
Over the last few months, I've talked to hundreds of people. Some of you are in this room, and a lot of you aren't. And here's what I heard. What I heard was, if you know your city does not work for all its citizens, it works for none of us. So what does that mean in terms of where we go together? What it means is that you want leadership that welcomes and listens to all of us. We've talked about what that might mean. It might mean, and it does, going to neighborhood associations, not waiting for someone to call you. It means reaching out. It means listening. It means doing all of those things. It means having hiring practices that reflect our citizens in their entirety. The other thing that it means is that, and we've heard it tonight, you want a city government that's intent and focused on delivering basic services. City government is a service organization. That's what it's about. And we've heard the kinds of services that we need to bring forward. We need to fix things. It's nice to look at the beauty. It's nice to look at the magic. We do it every day. It's the only place I've ever seen people visit where they don't look at their cell phones. But to keep that beauty and to keep that, us able to enjoy this and our children, as Grant said, be able to enjoy it, we have to pay attention. We need to be focused on a future that protects and preserves this hometown that we love. And that means that we need to look at it clearly, just like you would a kid, and say, okay, what do we need to do next? We've heard many times that the mayor is only one vote on the commission. What the mayor does is set the tone, the agenda, the culture, and the leadership. And I would like to ask you to trust me to do that for you. Thank you.
You may have noticed that we're having this videotape. It will be posted on YouTube. It'll probably take us about 2 days to get it up. But for your neighbors who could not come tonight, they'll be able to see the entire presentation, the entire forum on YouTube in about 2 days. And we'll send out a notice through the neighborhood council as to where to find that. The other thing is that we have been hosted tonight by the Council on Aging. And the staff here has been absolutely incredible to work with. And the money that you have put in the basket back there for water goes to the Council on Aging. So dig deep. All of us are going to be there one day. Some of us already are. But as you go out the door, Tom's walking over there to get the basket. That goes from us, from the neighborhood council, to the Council on Aging on your behalf. Other than that, last slide, please. Early voting, October 20th to November 1st. Election day is Tuesday, November the 4th. And for all of you, please get out and vote and encourage all your neighbors to get out and vote. Thank you very much for coming tonight.